There are no shortcuts to getting highly coveted press coverage for your brand, only smart cuts like the DIY PR project. Learn how to grow your brand's credibility with PR on a budget with me by your side. This program is your all-in-one membership with expert training, customizable templates, and a supportive community to cheer you on every step of the way. Join us and start growing your business with free publicity today. Sign up now at diy-pr.com. Are you a service-based entrepreneur drowning in admin tasks, client emails, and endless to-dos? Well, you're actually in luck today because in today's episode of Grow Your Wealth, I'm joined by Taylor Hedden, founder of Chanel and Lee. She's deep diving into how she built her multi-six-figure business by swapping burnout for business automation and streamlined systems. We're diving into the power of client onboarding systems, automation tools like Dubsado, and the exact processes that help her save time and her clients save time while setting boundaries and scaling without stress. Taylor explains when to automate versus delegate, how to design a client experience that feels effortless for you and for them, and why systems are truly the key to sustainable growth. If you've been debating between, say, hiring a VA or investing in automation, or you're ready to finally reclaim your time and prevent entrepreneurial burnout, this episode is your step-by-step roadmap to working smarter, not harder. Here's Taylor. Taylor, welcome to the Grow Your Wealth podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Trying to survive in summer with kids and a business and Texas heat.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I feel you. It feels like Texas up here in Ohio. And yeah, we're like hitting close to 100. So,
Yep, that's where we're at. It's disgusting.
oh my gosh. Well, I'm glad to see you in some air conditioning today, despite everything. Welcome again. I'd love to start at the beginning today, Taylor. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you founded Chanel and Lee.
Sure. Yeah. So I live in Houston, Texas. I'm a business owner of a few different brands, which I'll tell you a little bit about. I'm also a mom to two kiddos, 10 and 5, both about to be at their summer birthdays. So that's exciting. I'm married to my husband. And then, yeah, I founded Chanel and Lee. It actually started as a virtual assistant business, which I started in 2019. I got pregnant with my son very unexpectedly as a young 23-year-old and was working at the time at a bar and had to figure out a way to leave the bartending industry and support this new season of life that I was going into. So I found a job at an agency and I was making very little money doing social media management and taking some of my experience prior to the bartending world from art school and college and all the things, and was making awful money working with 10 men, commuting to downtown. And I was like, what am I going to do when my son is born? I want to be at home. I want to be able to make more money and really create, a foundation for a beautiful future for myself where I'm not sacrificing so much for very little. And I found a side hustle on Facebook. I had tapped into some artists and different groups I was a part of. And I was like, does anyone just need admin support or virtual assistance? And this was pre-COVID, so it wasn't as popular. And there really weren't many resources out there about how to start a virtual assistant business. Remote work was still very new, kind of in the online space. And I got some clients. That was April of 2019. I was about 6 months pregnant. And then by the time my son was born, a few months later in October, I was making the same amount of money as my job. So I said, well, this is clearly working and I'm going to take the risk and start this business. And then within a year, I had hit six figures on my own. And that's when systems became really huge in what I was doing as a virtual assistant. And I realized, one, I was really good at it. Two, it was really, really needed. There were not, again, a lot of people at that time doing this and really in the Dubsado space as experts. It was so new and fresh. And my clients wanted it and they were telling their friends about it and their business partners. And so I then leaned into the system side, and 2021, Chanel and Lee was born. It was pivoted from that business. And now it is fully client experience, automation setups and consulting, and been doing it ever since and really, really love it.
Oh, I love your story and can totally relate to it. Funny enough, I also started my agency, Factor PR. I actually had started it just as a side hustle right before getting pregnant.
Okay.
And then I was grateful for that because I ended up going back to work part-time and then working on my business part-time.
Mm.
Thinking that I would have more flexibility in my life. And in those early days, right, when you're just trying to survive early motherhood and survive
Yes.
starting a business, my God, I wish there was someone like you to whisper in my ear, systems, honey,
Yeah.
systems is how you not just survive, but thrive.
Yeah.
How did you learn that lesson early on as well, too? Like, what is it about systems? And what do you mean when you say systems, too?
Yeah. Well, from to answer the second question first, systems can be really anything in business that's going to create repeatable processes for you, right? So this might be an app or a software, this might just be standard procedures, this might be, just workflows that you either have automated or that you follow that you've really put some strategy into so you can operate your best, serve your clients your best and actually create more time to do the things that are actually going to move the needle in the business and continue to grow the business. But I got into it on accident. I've always been very much in the middle of an artist and creative, but also very analytical. Always loved, reading and all these things where you had to put logic into something and make it make sense, right? Even with my art, I wasn't really the creative that was like, oh, really out there and crazy. And it was very systematic how I made art. And there was always a process to it and a thought to it. And so as a virtual assistant, I realized I was really, really good at that stuff that most creatives were not good at. And that was
Mhm.
putting systems into place, making it make sense, putting a process, looking at something and organizing it. And actually, my first ever client as a virtual assistant, she was a photographer. We're still really good friends. And she was using a CRM, which we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But she was using a CRM and she wanted to move CRMs. And as her VA at the time, she said, hey, I want you to learn this new system because I heard it's great. I knew nothing about it. It was Dubsado at the time. I had never even heard of it, never seen it. And she said, I want you to learn it. I want you to move all of our business into that system and then teach us how to use it because I was her VA. And I did that. And I realized, like, oh, this is really interesting. And I really, really enjoy this. And I was fast at it. And so that system at the time was Dubsado. So because I was using it with her, I adopted it into my business, which I was, again, brand new at the time. So I immediately in my own business started using a CRM and learning about automations. And then, like I said, I realized my other clients didn't have anything like this. So I'm like, hey guys, I learned the system. Let me teach it to you now and put it into your business. And it just kind of spiraled to where then, I had people from all over and I became an expert just in this one particular CRM. So it's kind of by happenstance that I fell into it, started using it myself. And then obviously just hours and hours and hours in it has allowed me to know what I know now.
That's amazing. You are like a walking epitome of the saying, the riches are in the niches, being very specialized in something like Dubsado. I was not even familiar really with Dubsado until last year. So at my agency, we use Dubsado. And I'll be totally real with you,
Yeah.
Taylor. The reason why we signed up for it is because it can have our clients on auto pay and then
Yes.
also take care of any service charges, so like credit card fees.
Mhm.
And we still use QuickBooks, but QuickBooks, I don't know how, as a accounting first software, still doesn't do what Dubsado does.
Right.
But that being said, I will also admit to you, there are so many features that I have
Mhm.
not even dipped my toes into. And I'm
Yeah.
probably someone like many of our listeners, like your type of customer who's like, oh, I signed up for like the shiny software, but I'm not fully using it in my business. What are the benefits of Dubsado? First of all, you mentioned it's a CRM system. I feel like it's even more than that, right?
Mhm.
Like what are the benefits of Dubsado and how are your clients using it to its full
Mhm.
potential? Like what is that transformation that it can ultimately provide if they have someone like you to show them how to use it and set it up
Yeah.
appropriately?
Yeah, I mean, it's very common what you're saying. A lot of my clients, they have it and it's also really low cost. So people kind of get into it because it's not a huge upward, initial investment. And then they're like, wait, this is bigger than I kind of thought it was. And then they kind of get intimidated or overwhelmed or they just use the bare minimum. And for those who don't know what a CRM is, it's a client relationship management tool. So these are softwares out there that really help you manage your projects, client communication, and handle all of the things in the business in one software. So there's many out there. Dubsado is definitely one of the smaller ones compared to some of those big dog like HubSpot and things like that that are, big corporations or very large businesses are using. Dubsado started about 9 years ago. So they're very unique because they immediately spoke to the creative entrepreneurs, service based entrepreneurs, usually small to medium size or solopreneurs. And like I said, it's very affordable. Even the premier rate plan, I should say, is only $40 a month. So in the grand scheme, like that is a very affordable cost for something that can handle, I'd say 60% of the back end work you're doing with your clients, right? So from a software perspective, it does all of the things you would be doing day to day with clients. Think things like sending emails, taking payments, sending contracts, collecting information on a form, providing client portals. It also lets you do all the back end management. So you can create tasks and automate things with your team. You can schedule meetings. You have your calendar in there. And then you can then automate all of that. So while it does have all those features, the part that I try to teach people and really help them implement in the business is, okay, we have this software that can do all these things and it can do it for you. So you don't even have to be the one going in and clicking the buttons and sending the things. You can create these workflows that handle all of that and they're super customized and unique to your business. So, I mean, it's a very, very powerful tool. And then to answer your other question for business owners, I mean, the number one thing it does is gives you time back, right? And not just from an automation perspective, and we can get into, automation, why it's scary and all of the things, but just even templating out your work, right? We have people that come to me and they're using 7 different apps. They're typing the same email every day. They're reacting to the business rather than having things in place to help them actually run the business. So then they can go spend that time doing the things, again, that move the needle, living in their genius, actually doing the work that they love and the reason why they started the business. So the time back is just insane, immediate ROI. And then client experience, right? Which we were talking about off air a second ago. It just creates an amazing experience for your clients. It gives you the ability to create excellence and really control that experience. It allows you to serve them when you're not, your best, or when you're out of town, or, when you're not in the business every single day. It can operate without you. And I think that's every business owner's dream, right? Is to be able to have a business, do the parts they love, and then automate the rest so that the way they can actually enjoy the business that they're building.
Amen to that. In your experience, what do you think makes an exceptional client experience?
Oh, yes, yes. I love that question because people are always like, what even is client experience or what makes it up? And I teach a framework, a specific framework in all of my strategy, especially when I'm teaching Dubsado in webinars or master classes. And there's really 3 things that make up your client experience. And obviously, this goes so much bigger than just your CRM. This is how you show up online. This is your website. This is all of the things. But from a systems perspective, and kind of like looking through that lens, we have all your information, right? The things that you're sharing with clients, the things you're collecting, everything you need to give to be able to actually serve your clients. We also have communication, which is at the center of everything, right? Being able to communicate that information with clients and how you communicate and where and when, the tone, right? There's so much that goes into communication. And then support, right? How do we support the client to have success, especially as service providers? There's definitely kind of a back and forth, a relationship with your clients in any industry. And so how are we supporting them? How are we keeping them accountable? How are we creating boundaries even, which is always kind of like, oh, interesting. Boundaries support our clients, but they do. And so that really makes up the client experience. And then we can break that down into real interactions, touch points, again, boundaries, and then all of the different vehicles that help us move through that client process from start to finish.
That makes a lot of sense. And I remember hearing a saying not too long ago, right? Like, especially when it comes to things like setting up systems, it really comes down to editing those systems as much as possible, right? So like, it's not about creating more steps, but about kind of removing the fluff and the fastest, easiest, most affordable way to be able to achieve whatever goal it is, right? And with client experience, So this is something that I coach my own team on. Like sometimes we overcomplicate things as well too. Like what they really want, they want to hear from us. They want us to know we're
Mhm.
on it, right? They want quick feedback on things, quick
Yes.
responses, of course, like the media that we work with as well. So in many ways, in addition to saving time, it sounds like that you're able to get some time back to really work on like relationship building, would you
Yes.
say, as well
Oh,
too?
absolutely. Yeah. Well, and to your point, there is such a thing as underwhelm and overwhelm, right?
Mhm.
Someone could work with you and be like, that was so underwhelming. It was not what I thought it was going to be, and there's also overwhelm where it's like, gosh, there's just so much information. It's very heavy. I feel like I'm doing half the work, right? So it's a balance of, like you said, fine tuning, polishing, and being really, really intentional with what you're automating and where and all of that information. But, yes, the personalization, that is actually one of the, I would say, biggest objections for people who are exploring automation is they're like, I don't want it to be impersonal. Everything needs to be customized. And to your point, that's exactly what I tell them is like your emails and your forms and all these things. One, there's ways to personalize them with automation by plugging in information. So that's one thing.
Mhm.
And secondly, your clients aren't worried about your email being uber personalized, right? When you have systems in place, you can actually then spend your energy on the relationships, on the client facing, items or the one-on-one calls, the bigger level strategy and also leadership, right? I mean,
Mhm.
if you're with a team, you own a business with a team, then, your team's serving your clients. So do you have the time and energy to pour into your team so they can serve, your clients in their best way? So I think the personalization part is, yeah, it's so interesting hearing people say that. And I'm like, no, 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 it's actually the opposite. You'll get more time to personalize when you automate things.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know a lot of folks are also they're giddy about AI, but they're also kind
Yeah.
of worried about AI as well too, right? And so this whole idea of like entering the automation age for many is welcomed, right? Especially as a business owner. It's painful to have a line item on your P&L statement, hiring someone to like sit in the meeting and take notes and send emails that
Right.
need to be sent and things like that are necessary again for that client engagement and that relationship. However, is not using someone for their higher purpose and like,
Mhm.
who actually really loves doing that
Mhm.
as well too.
Yeah.
Um
Or even one thing too is, I work with a lot of business owners who are maybe in that 1 to 3 year stage and it's just them and they're
Mhm.
scaling quickly. And they come to me and they're kind of at a crossroads of like, okay, I want to automate, but I should hire a VA. And I'm always like, what do you need a VA for? Right? Tell me some of the things you need a VA for. And it's like, oh, I need to answer emails. I got to send these proposals. And during onboarding, there's all these things. And I'm like, okay, let's think about this. If you're going to invest, let's even just say $800 a month, $500 a month on a VA with all these things you could automate literally for $40 a month. What if you then had that, $400 a month to actually hire experts in the things you really need help with: social media management, email marketing, PR, right?
Mhm.
The VA tasks, a lot of the times, can be automated. Now, that's not to say at some point you might need a virtual assistant to come in and then manage that automation or then help personalize and things like that. But it's just very interesting where that mindset is like, oh, I need to outsource this, but they don't really think about the power of automation and how much money they actually save by doing that first and then looking at, now, do I actually need a VA?
Ooh, that's super interesting because we know, I mean, you know probably better than I do. I mean, there are some very, very successful VA
Yeah,
agencies out there,
absolutely.
especially like the offshore ones, right? Like I
Mhm.
hear about that all the time. And to each their own, right? But again, like I always think about a VA in particular for someone like me in my business that is we sell our service. So we are
Mhm.
very client facing. But a VA doesn't add equity or value to the service that I provide. In fact, many times our clients will not really be engaging with them because,
Right.
right, they're strictly virtual. And so, that being said, I have really dragged my feet on. I've never had a VA. I have people who are virtually assisting me in some ways
Mhm.
because they're helping me with like my Kajabi or something like
Right,
that. But
right.
that's not a client facing activity. That's really just to sort of support me so I don't have to do
Right,
it
a
else. And
task that
so
you hand off.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But like a consistent member of the team where I'm, giving them responsibilities like that,
Mhm.
I've found that automating things, right? Like using these CRMs, setting it up, setting up SOPs, and then handing that off has been a lot more fruitful. But
Mhm.
it's interesting to have this conversation because I haven't really spoken openly about that because there are all these other, people out there that would say you're doing it wrong.
No, I think you're doing it very, very right. And again, that's not to say someone can absolutely hand things off to a VA, but I was a VA. So I have this like inside look. And again, most people were handing things off that could have been automated, or they were spending so much time on these other things that these tasks they had no time for. And in my opinion, were needle moving things, right? I mean, even for
Mhm.
example, maybe a wedding pro, right? A big part of being a wedding pro is getting your work out there, blogs, features, right? Sharing your portfolio. They don't even have time to spend on that, which is what they love doing, their work, because they're sending emails, right? So there's all this
Yeah.
confusion of like, what do I hand off and how do I hand it off? And I always start with, well, let's look at your systems. What can we actually put into a system first? Then you can analyze, okay, now what's left? What can I handle now that I have some free time? What are things that I don't actually want to do, or things that I do need an expert to come in and set up or, execute? And then that makes it so much easier to kind of think about where to hire and who to hire and what kind of VA you actually even need too, which is really important.
Absolutely. What I love about systems as well too is that they also provide a lot of clarity. So once you set up your system, unless your system is set up incorrectly, like how do you go wrong, right? And so that also I think helps with efficiency. We often say here at Factor, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Like it
Yes.
is a slog, right, to set up these systems, but once you set them up, you'll be running smoother, and then once you're running more smoothly, you'll accelerate your growth, right? Or ideally
Exactly.
that's what happens. So I'd love for you to kind of tell us a little bit about what exactly are you doing for your clients? Like what is the transformation? I know we touched upon that just a little bit, but maybe you could walk us through a service-based business owner that doesn't have systems set up,
Mhm.
what their day-to-day looks like, what their business looks like, and then with systems,
Mhm.
what does that change reflect in their business?
Yeah. So when people come to me, they're kind of in different camps. I have the business owner who's, like I said, 1 to 3 years, they're new, they're running on their own, and they maybe underestimated how quickly they would grow, or maybe they're just at a point now where, they are unable to sustain the work in the business without burning out or without feeling like that, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to keep doing this? Was this the right decision? Am I in the right business? And so for those people, their day is so, again, reactive, right? They're logging in and they're trying to put out fires or just keep up with the wheel versus having things in place that are already working ahead. And so, doing things like, okay, a client, lead happens and they're spending 2 hours working on a proposal and they're doing that
Mhm.
every single time. But every day is going to look different because do they even have that 2 hours to sit there and work on this super custom proposal and type the email out again? Also, my clients who are working with many clients per, month or week, and, they have kind of a recurring or a higher volume, they're spending so much time onboarding and making sure that the client is receiving things that they start to maybe miss things. They start to not do things as well as they possibly could because they are, again, relying on how they feel that day or what time they have that day. And then people are honestly getting behind because, I mean, the reality is we're all business owners with lives, and many of us have children or partners or just other things or even jobs. We have full time jobs.
Mm.
And so we're having to figure out how to handle the business when we have other things happening, or when you're sick, or when you have low energy, or your kid's sick that day and now you can't work, but you've got all this stuff piled up because you don't have anything in place to help you. And so what I do is, one, we start with strategy. We look at like, how should you actually be operating, which is a big reason why people hire me. It's not just let's
Mhm.
take what you're doing and put it into a system. No, we start from scratch and think through the exact client journey from when they come in to after you finish the entire service. We're thinking about every touch point. We're thinking about what you need, what the client needs. We're thinking about the flow, the communication. And so I help my clients strategize that and then obviously put it into place. Then you have the other camp of people who are usually working with a team. I work with a lot of medium-sized businesses, maybe making 1 million or more in revenue a year, and they might have a full-time client admin. They might have multiple different team members, kind of like yourself, where you might have different PR agents on the team with, managing accounts. And they're at the point where they can't scale because they don't have the systems in place. So every team member is doing something a little different, or the business owner is now not a CEO, they're just managing, right? And they're having to quality check and micromanage. And so the business owner is coming to me saying, I'm ready to like start my podcast or start a new business or lead, but I can't because we're so bogged down. So through all of that, for both of those people, they show up and one, there's an amazing client experience in place that they're confident selling. That's a huge one, right? They know their process. They can sell it so much better. There's an expectation. We also set boundaries in place, right? A lot of my clients come to me with very little boundaries, and we're able to set those through communication, expectations, again, the process and the scope of the work because we've outlined the journey. And then the time back, right? Now they're not showing up and reacting. They know things are happening behind the scenes. There is a process. And even to your point with the clear guidelines of, hey, now I can hand this off to my team. I can bring in a VA because we have a process and it's set in stone. There's an expectation, there's a flow. It's so much easier to audit and to review your actual client's journey because you have the framework and the foundation in place. So, I mean, there's just so many benefits. I could probably talk about it forever, but I think that it's also something that you scales with you. So it's going to add more over time as your client experience does get tighter and as you are more confident even implementing it, because it can be scary at first to put it into practice.
Hey there, I want to invite you to join our Grow Your Wealth community over on Slack. It's a safe space to network and connect with podcast guests, entrepreneurs, and wellness minded pros just like you. Head to growyourwealthpodcast.com/community to join us. That's growyourwealthpodcast.com/community. I look forward to seeing you over there. I'll tell you what scares me about automation. Maybe we'll just put you in the hot seat right now, Taylor. But what scares me a little bit about automation is that, and I know you had briefly mentioned this, is that I still want a level of customization with my clients. So, for example, at Factor PR for our one-on-one agency clients, we work with service providers and we work with CPG brands. And ultimately, what we deliver for our clients, we have a framework that we sell, but some clients also elect to hire us for just a part of that framework. So, for example, maybe they don't need us to do their marketing too because they have a marketing team,
Right.
but they need us for the PR. So that's just one part of that framework. So that being said, that to me sounds like, whoo, a lot of different systems for different avatars. And maybe that's a reflection on my own business. Like, ooh, is that too many avatars? Right. So do you also come in and kind of help coach your clients as well too, just in terms of streamlining their processes a little bit so that maybe to use my analogy earlier, we are cutting out more of the fluff and then just, kind of streamlining our communications and even expectations with our clients too. So I guess what is my question ultimately, Taylor, is, how much can you customize to the point of like, okay, a system's not going to fix this, right? Like we got to go back to the strategy part.
No, that's a really good question and point because I think a lot of my clients, once we go through the strategy, and I have a very specific process where we map it out on Zoom, and it's very interesting because after those calls, my clients often tell me, "Oh my God, I never thought about my service that way," or "Why do I do it that way?" or "Why do I have this deliverable?" And they it gives them a chance to really look at how they're operating with clients, and also kind of how their business actually works. Like a lot of times we'll be on a call and they'll have this service where it's not like I'm saying, "Hey, why is this here?" But when we look at everything, I'm like, "Okay, now we're on to this service." And they're like, "Actually, I don't really need that. That was just a super customized offer because I realized people were wanting this very, specific thing." And maybe it kind of opened their eyes to how to implement that or take it out, or, no one's even booking that. I just had it there because of whatever. And so it does give you that ability to kind of look at it And again, not always is it going to be this, super automated, systematic. There is manual parts of the automation process. There are pieces of the process where you are going to have to step in. I always tell my clients, you are mistaken if you think there's going to be this fully automated, it handles everything, you never have to come in. That is not true and realistic of most service-based businesses. Now, products and e-commerce, that's different. But with my clients, I would say it really does depend on the business, but one thing we do in that process is we do look at automating the repetitive workflows that apply to all of our clients. So usually like your inquiry process can be pretty general and applicable to most projects that you have coming in, maybe the offboarding, right? But then what we do in my process is we actually break it down by service. So that way there is again, the communication and the language is relevant to that service. And we really look at, is this actually something that needs to be automated? Does this need to be delegated? So someone in the team needs to execute this, or do you need to really own this as the business owner? Like you have to show up to the call, or you're going to have to create that deliverable every time custom. So it is kind of like a method to the madness. And really my role is almost like a guide. I help them think through it. I ask the questions. And then I also just bring in all of the industry knowledge of the hundreds and hundreds of businesses I've seen in the back end to really give them a pulse of, you know what, hey, everyone in your industry is automating this. So if you're not, there's a reason we kind of need to dig into it versus, hey, every interior designer, yeah, they're having to customize this scope of work very much so because you're in such a custom industry. So let's keep this in your zone. So I think that's also something that we have to kind of look at is like, what is the standard? And if you're way off course of the standard in your market, that's probably a sign that we can tighten it up.
I love that. You bring up such a great point as well too, having experience with a lot of other clients as
Hmm.
well. You can also step in as an expert, not just
Yeah.
a system maker, but like as an expert. This works for these types of clients. I have
Hmm.
experience working with these types of clients. I mean, same thing with us as well too. We work
Yeah.
with beauty, home, and wellness clients. We've been doing it for almost a decade. I've seen it all, right? Like we
Yeah.
can make some advice within reason, right? And act upon that. That being said, for a lot of service-based businesses, my own included, the onboarding process is so critical. I feel like you only
Mhm.
get one first impression.
1000%.
And if you cannot onboard professionally and efficiently, I think it reflects poorly, right, on
Yep.
your business. Do you have tips for entrepreneurs that are, I mean, it could be service, product, whatever, in terms of that onboarding process?
Mhm.
Like, what is a pretty good standard of what that should look like, and how can systems help you achieve that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Onboarding is, oh my gosh, the booking to onboarding road or bridge, if you will, is I think one of the most important parts of the business. I mean, it's sales, it's client communication, it's
Yeah.
taking all the things you said, on Instagram and your website and your call and then putting it into action and it sets the tone of the whole service. And like you said, if it's underwhelming or if it's complicated, it is going to leave a bad taste in their mouth and can ultimately affect how they view the rest of that service with you. But in a standard or to like at a standard level, kind of what I see across the board in all the industries I've worked with, one is having some kind of immediate action upon payment. And I'm not talking about just a receipt or like, okay, great, you're booked, but really having a fantastic touch point with at least one action within the touch point. And the reason why this should be automated is because they might be paying at midnight. They might be paying when you're in the car rider line or you're on a client call or you're at the gym, right? And so we have to make sure there is an immediate automation. Now, a lot of businesses have to personalize the onboarding. They've got to create a folder, they've got to add them to something, they've got to send something that's personal, right? Which I understand. So prior to that, having an email, you're in, we're confirmed, we've received your contract, your invoice, so they're not
Mhm.
questioning, did they get my money? And then having some kind of immediate action or item for them to review while you are preparing the next step. So this might be a guide, this might be a website page where you're going to have them start to brainstorm. It might be a really, really easy homework item like creating a Pinterest board. It might be filling out a general intake form or a questionnaire that is standard for that onboarding process, right?
Mm.
Then we're able to come back to our computer. Great, they've booked. Amazing. While you were sleeping or, wherever you were at the gym. And then they've already received something from you, right? And it was immediate. It was super personalized with your brand tone and all of the things. And it gave them something to work on. Now you can create the Google Drive, link whatever, assign the teammate, whatever you need to do before we send that next onboarding step. So that's kind of how I love to start the process.
Mm.
Now, some things to consider too is to not overwhelm. I see this so often where they send an onboarding email and it's like homework and fill this out and go here and here's your portal and here's this. And it's just like, whoa, they're guaranteed to be like overwhelmed or not even open it because it's 10 paragraphs or skip something. And now you're chasing down something because it was too much in one. So I really try to look at what do we really need in onboarding versus what could wait till later, what could wait till a call, what can be pieced out even, i.e. you do this and then the next thing sends to you. For example, if you have a kickoff call, but you need a questionnaire to be filled out prior for your own information, send that first and then tell them, hey, as soon as you complete this, then you're going to get the link to book the call. You're basically incentivizing them, right? Because most people just book the call and then a lot of times they forget to fill it out or they rush to do it before the call. And now you can't show up to that call doing the thing that you really need to do with the information you need. So by telling them, hey, this has to be done before we can get to the next thing, incentivizes them to actually do that. And then with something like Dubsado, we can just automate that. So a workflow can then watch for that form. And as soon as the workflow sees it's been submitted, it can send that email. Hey, Susie, thanks so much for filling out that homework. We're so pumped to get started. Here's the link to book your call. She books the call. She gets some prep info. Now that your call's booked, here's some things to think about. So it's all about, again, leading them through a process and not dumping all this information and hoping that they do it correctly to get started.
Oh, that is so powerful. And
Yeah.
already I feel a tingle, Taylor. I'm like, all the
Like, wait.
time you save, all the time you save, because it is repetitive. And I think maybe that's a good gauge for people. Like, could this be for me? Like, are there things in your business that you are repeating with
Yeah.
every single new client? Automate that, right?
Yes.
Automate that. I almost dropped a bad word in there, but
I
automate
was
that.
going to say, I'm usually a potty mouth, but I didn't ask you for if I can do that. So I haven't. No, but that's
We
so
came
true.
close.
That is literally when people ask me the common question, especially on these types of interviews, where should people start if they're not sure? And that's exactly what I ask them is like, and it
Mhm.
can start small. Just this week, find 5 things that you are doing over and over, or you're doing it weekly, or you're sending the same thing. Turn it into a template. It can start with emails. It can start with a form. If you already have that set up, then make an effort to automate one thing. One thing. It doesn't have to be this full blown workflow, but maybe you are automating just that first initial confirmation of booking, based on an invoice being paid or a contract being signed. That is like a 2-action workflow in Dubsado. Very, very easy to figure out and go from there, right? So, or even break it up into chunks. This week, I'm going to tackle my emails. Then I'm going to go in and put my templates and my forms, and then I'm going to automate things. So it really is looking at what is repetitive and
Mhm.
sucking up my time. And that's the best place to start when it comes to automation.
I couldn't agree more. I similarly believe that in addition to the onboarding process, automations can really help with the client inquiry process. So, like,
Mhm.
somebody's interested in working with you, right? One of the things that I'm curious your thoughts on that was advised to me once was just asking about budget upfront. Now, I don't know if that's a turnoff or not, but what it tells my system is like, am I going to spend my time chatting with this person or this
Mhm.
company if, already budget makes us,
Not a good fit.
incompatible? Right,
Right.
exactly. And so that being said, I've struggled with, do I do this? Do I not? Like, oh, everything's worth a conversation, right?
Mhm.
But do you also find like automation and systematizing actions in even just like the inquiry process is helpful for your clients and even for you too, right?
Yes, I mean, that is, again, another huge time saver of booking calls and, scheduling meetings and sending out initial pricing guides. All of that can be automated and it absolutely should. To your question of budget, I do commonly see that. I think it depends on, again, the market and kind of what that looks like and how much competition there is, because there are markets where people price shop a little bit more, like wedding industry, people are constantly price shopping. And so that's always a common complaint is people come in and then they have no idea what my pricing is. But usually my first question is, okay, well, is your pricing or even starting prices anywhere accessible to them? Is it on your website? When they come in as an inquiry, are you first sending some kind of pricing investment guide that has some starting prices? And usually they're like, no. And I'm like, well, of course they're wondering what the cost is and they have no
Yeah.
idea. So you're getting on a call and they're shocked. But I definitely recommend that. So having, maybe that first email, and again, most of my clients, they want to approve, the lead before they move into inviting them to a
Mm.
call. So usually it's, they come through an inquiry form and we have an email immediate that's, hey, thanks so much for reaching out. We're checking our availability, or even, hey, we'll be getting back to you soon. In the meantime, here's a quick guide that covers a little bit about us and our services. And it doesn't have to be your full packages, because a lot of times either it's custom or you want to sell them. You don't want them to get inundated with pricing. And so you can just have
Yeah.
starting prices and very, very simple, basic packages. So that's a great way to start. And then also,
Mhm.
a lot of times it's the language of the question, because sometimes if we just put, what's your budget? People still put way lower than they actually would be willing to pay, or they put something that they don't know what even the standard is. And so we're
Mm.
almost kind of like setting a number in their head by making them answer that question without giving them any data. Like, a lot of people have no idea, if they've never worked with a PR agency, what that costs, right? So my favorite way to do that is to have a drop down with different increments of pricing, right? And your lowest, or your lowest option is your lowest, around your lowest package. So if they see that lowest option and they thought it was $200 and your lowest is 1,000, they're already kind of associating the value of what you're going to be selling. So that's one way. Another way would be to even have in the question, if we're doing an open format question, what is your budget? And then in parentheses, our clients spend on average X amount per month or X amount per service. And again, it can kind of be your middle anchor offer right there. So then they already kind of know, again, that anchor point when you come in, and we can either upsell or downsell. My way that I do it, I don't ask budget, because my pricing is everywhere and it's online, it's not private. But I ask them at what stage of buying they're in. And this is really powerful for me because it lets me know my level of selling on a call. So I have a few
Mm.
options, like, I'm ready to do this, I just want to chat first, or I would like more information, I'm comparing options, or I just want to know more. And usually that gives me a really good thermometer of, do they know what this is? Do they know what it costs? And are they eager to buy? Or do I really need to inform them a little bit more?
That is such a hot tip.
I
Thank you
know.
for that.
Yeah.
I think that is a really, really great tip, because I think also if you are the primary salesperson, like I am
Mhm.
in my business, it's intent is really important to qualify your leads. Like, is this just like a, spin my wheels intro call? Could I have wrapped this up with a video instead of like spending my time? And then that helps kind of trigger another system, right? Like
Mhm.
another step in that process. Oh, your intent is just to learn more.
Exactly.
So I'm going to shoot off a video or send you an email. And then if your intent is I'm ready to go, like, let's get on the phone, let's do this. Right. And
Mhm.
I love that. That seems more beneficial to your client, right? And
Mhm.
then beneficial for you as well, too. So you smart, Taylor. I like
Right.
that a lot.
And you can automate that. So in Dubsado
Yeah.
specifically, on your contact form, there's a question that can have conditional logic trigger a specific workflow. I just did this for a client this week. For example, she has brides come in and they have a high volume of leads. She does hair and makeup. And she has brides who come in and they're like ready to go, ready to book. And then she has all these people who come in and they just want pricing, because obviously their pricing is very custom. So we
Mm.
created two different routes. One where if they say I'm ready to book, or like, let's go, it triggers a call immediately for them to book. The one that says, I would just like some pricing, which, just like you said, sends an investment guide and lets them know, hey, if you're ready to move forward or want to chat more, just let us know. And so now she's filtering out all of these leads that she was responding and they're booking a call just to be like, oh, how much does hair and makeup cost? So you can even automate that step of where they're actually going and the touch point they get next, depending on.
That is such a great tip. So, so smart. And speaking of, I'm wondering if you could share one more tip with us today, just because you are so inside a lot of people's businesses, really forming this ecosystem in their businesses, this ecosystem of efficiency and ultimately results and experience for your clients, but your clients' clients as well
Mhm.
too. And that's a huge, huge undertaking for people. What do you wish entrepreneurs knew about systematizing automation? I mean, if they could systematize one thing in their business to start somewhere, what would
Mhm.
that look like?
Yeah, I think my biggest tip would be again, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but you don't have to do everything at once. I think people assume, okay, great, I'm going to get Dubsado, I'm going to get this software and I need to automate. Or they listen to this episode and they're like, oh my God, there's so many things I'm doing wrong. And that is not it at all, right? You can
Mhm.
do this over time. You can start small and scale it. I have a lot of clients who DIY some things just to get some time back in the business before they can invest, maybe $4,000 in a setup. Or I have
Mhm.
clients who do want to DIY all of it and they want to learn it. And so they take it step by step. So you do not have to feel overwhelmed and, be like, I got to burn it all down. Nothing's automated. It's not good. You can start small. And even just thinking about some of these things we've talked about today, zoning in on that one part of the process. Maybe you're just automating that inquiry email and scheduling a meeting, and everything after you're going to just handle for now. Or maybe you
Mhm.
are just automating your proposal and payment to an initial email. So I would say, again, thinking about what are you spending right now the most time on when it comes to a repetitive task, let's focus on just automating that for now. I think that
Mhm.
kind of takes out some of this scary part of automation of being like, I've got to tackle all of this. And it really gives you the ability to do it in an easier way. Also, the other thing too, tip wise and just a thought process or a mindset to have going into it is that automation, and you touched on this, it doesn't have to be super complicated and long and intense and everything's automated. It really is, back to your point of the smooth is fast, we can actually trim it down a lot more and it still be very, very effective. And in fact, I actually unfortunately work with clients who come to me because someone else set it up and it didn't work or it wasn't good, or that person was really not a great expert and really did the wrong type of automations, which I see often. And most times, 9 out of 10 when I have those clients, there's too much. The automation is too complicated. And as business owners, if something's complicated, we're not going to use it, right? So if your system is so complicated that it's even keeping you from using it, we're missing the point. So keep it simple, start small, scale up, or, hire me and I'll just do it all for you.
Love that. I love that. And I love that you shared on your social media recently too. And that's so critical, right? Is you are also able to hand this off, right? The right way, set it up, and then hand it off to your clients if they want as well too, which I wanted to note because I think that that's so powerful just as far as empowering your clients. That's ultimately
Mhm.
what you're trying to do, right? At the
Yeah.
end of the day. And speaking of which, my last question for you, and then I think we have a little treat that you wanted to share at the end for our listeners. So hang in there with us as you in many ways, I feel like are your ideal client. You have this lived experience as well too. You run multiple businesses, you
Mhm.
also have a podcast. How do systems benefit you and ultimately help you make space for being exactly like your clients, like being that entrepreneur that has the headspace for creativity and forward
Mhm.
thinking as well?
Yeah, I think systems for me really help me give structure to what I'm doing. When I first started my business, I felt, and I'm sure many people can relate, yourself included, you just feel kind of like spaz where there's all these things and you're kind of just taking them as they come and knocking things out. And there's not a lot of structure when you're starting because you are wearing all the hats and you're working really hard over time to get things where they need to be. And granted, time does kind of help with that. So now that I'm, 6 years in, I feel like I've had the experience to know what to do and what not to do. But I implemented systems very early on in my business. And so it helped me really set boundaries, my work hours, knowing that even if I'm off, if I'm with my kids, if I'm working on a passion project or another business, if I have leads coming in or if I have clients onboarding, things are happening and don't need me in it 24/7. It's also allowed me to really focus on other areas of the business so I can scale and put time and energy into either my client interactions or marketing, which I love doing. And ultimately, it's allowed me to really audit my business. I even for myself, and I'm not perfect. So I've had times where I'm like, this question keeps coming up from clients. Like let me go to my system and see where I'm kind of missing something or where there's a roadblock, or maybe I need to move that over here or kind of change this form. So I regularly audit my business, and I'm able to do that because I have a process and I can kind of see where something might be lost, or where a client might be confused, or where something could just flow better. And I also do that with an offboarding process where I get critique and feedback from clients. And of course, it's automated, so it just happens without me doing anything. But that has been really amazing because it allows me to look at my business and critique my business so I can get better and I can fine tune and I can polish and I can also pivot if I need to, right? And use those workflows for new services and things like that. So I preach automation. I obviously implement it, but I use it so much in my own business. And I think it's one of the reasons I've been as successful as I have been.
You have been so generous with insights on this podcast episode. Thank you so much, Taylor. I really learned a lot as well, too. I've been in business for a while now, but you have really shown me some blind spots, even in my own business. And I feel like others will feel the same as well, too. In that spirit of generosity, everyone, Taylor has on her website a free client experience library. Would love if you could tell us a little bit about that and this amazing discount opportunity on your shop. What can we find in there?
Yeah, so the library is great even if you're not using Dubsado, I used to have all these freebies and I was like, let me just put them all in one thing because I have a lot of free stuff in there over the years that I've created. So there are things like a ton of trainings and free classes I've taught, on workflows, on proposals, on Dubsado, and some of them are hours long. So that is just all kinds of free information there. And you see how much I give in a podcast. So those are chock full with all kinds of tips. There's also templates like canned emails. There are some Dubsado templates in there. So if you are a Dubsado user, you can actually use those in your account. So that's a great place to start, even just to kind of, get your hands on some tips and some ideas, or even up level some things that you can implement quickly. And then I do have a shop. The shop is mostly Dubsado related. So I have templates in there like proposals and forms. I also have canned email packs specific to industries there. And I have a discount code. But yeah, that's good for one item in the shop.
Amazing. Yes, we'll have the show notes, the code. I'm sorry, we'll have in the show notes the link as well as the code so everyone can take advantage of that. I certainly will. Thank you so much, Taylor. Where can people keep in touch with you?
Yeah, so anywhere online at Chanel and Lee, channelandlee.com. Again, tons of resources there, blogs, lots of YouTube videos and tutorials. You can find me on Instagram is where I primarily spend my time. And then I also have, if you are interested in Dubsado, and I'll give you this link as well for the show notes, I do have a 30% off code for that. One tip I will say for anyone who's still listening this far in, but if you are wanting Dubsado, one of the best things about it is that you can use the trial as long as you want until you have 3 clients in there. So it's not like a 2-week, feel it out, now you got to pay for it. I tell people, hey, get in the trial, play around, get some templates in there, move some clients over and use that as long as you need. And then when you're ready to actually start implementing it, then of course you can use that paid subscription and that 30% off code. So come and find me on Instagram. I'm always sharing things and would love to connect. And again, if you also just want to hand this off, I do that as well.
Amazing. Taylor, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on Grow Your Wealth.
Thanks, Rena.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode deposited some useful advice and insights to help you grow your wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future conversations. You can find more resources, episode details, and updates at growyourwealthpodcast.com. And let's keep the conversation going on Instagram. Follow me at Grow Your Wealth Podcast. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or takeaway from today's show. Until next time, remember, burnout is optional. Take care, and I'll see you next week.